Yo, what's up, guys? This is actually one of my favorite spots to make videos, and I got a good topic. So I've made this video a few times, but I think I finally have the right flavor to it. So how I want to position this is like, how far up the mountain do you want to go, right? So we all have kind of like a goal we want to set. Lowest being like that deep samadhi meditation and optimal fitness, kind of being on a whole new bandwidth of health. Second gear, riding your bike on that higher gear, which is easy to maintain, even though it's more effort. It's actually less effort. Then the highest kind of levels of this are going to be activating more psychic intuition, which I know some of you have said specifically as your goal. For others, you're still sort of validating that that's even viable or feasible. So for both those camps, what I wanted to do here is put together a list of the steps I took in my path to become more initiated into that being true or real or valid. And mind you, I did this with healthy skepticism, like a good scientist, more skeptical than believing, right? And so this will be fun, this will be exciting, this will be juicy, this will be out there, and this really should accelerate your own sort of credence or believingness in these things. And then for some of you who have maybe only had secondhand testimony, which is me for years, meaning like you were academically aware of these concepts, but you didn't firsthand know what was true, this will hopefully give you a credible story from someone who you trust, as having really no interest in not knowing the truth. All I care about is the true. So, wanted to first give a quick kind of like cherry nugget as to how this is useful, a little fire sauce. So, this whole thing will take a minute, but it'll be informative. I'm gonna try and shortcut what took me 11 years of navigation to a lot shorter than that. So it is, however, a story, and there are pieces to it. I'm gonna go as short as I can while covering the major pieces. So so here's how it's useful. So I'm starting a new job tomorrow. It's cool. It's the fall equinox. I've been out of a job for 4 years, 5 months. I mean, obviously I consider it like my spiritual art, my main job. This is going to let me do that. And shortcutting the story, there's a lot of spiritual kind of at playness, dreams, etc., for exactly when I started looking for a job, etc. But I'm taking this job with Ochin based off some spiritual advice, things that came up through clairvoyance during that phone call. Whereas a phone call with another group, I seen a brick, which means a block. And mind you, 7 days before I'm starting this job, I get an email about a contract job, and the contract jobs pay more, pretty significant. Ochin pays more than the other groups, but those contract jobs pay a lot. And that morning, before I read the email, waking up, sometimes when I'm trying to remember my dreams, I'll see a sign. And sometimes it makes sense in relation to the dreams, or it'll make sense for something that happens that day. And I saw the greedy sign. My spirits show a hand reaching into a jar. Like if you grab too many pickles, you can't get out the jar. And so that made that decision a lot easier for me. If I had to go on that decision by logic alone, like I'd already said yes to one group and other groups offering more money. And what's funny is Spirit knows what's best. I'm going to have more fun with the group I'm doing. They're service-oriented, they're super cool, they're high-tech, they're advanced in their thinking. They organize their organization in systems theory, logic. They're against hierarchy and bureaucracy. They're funny people, they're cool people. My manager wrote back dope when I was like, yo, I got all my gear. He's like, dope. So I'm going to have fun with this group, and it won't take too much time, I don't think, as opposed to the consultancy work. And my main thing is getting out my my spiritual stuff. Now, there may be something with this consultancy group later. We'll see. They only give you so many breadcrumb trails or pieces or clues. Now, way back in the day, I did not believe in the third eye. When I started, I didn't know if I believed in reincarnation. I didn't know if I believed in chakras. But now I'm at a point where I have certain psychic communication channels that have really high accuracy rates than others that have less accuracy rates. And so when I get something through a clear channel, that's worth more than gold. That's basically the portion of me beyond time space, aka God. But I think of it as my multidimensional higher self, giving me something that's from a perspective beyond my own, right? I'm not trying to be boring, but it's basically like you have a phone home, you have a self that can see the probable future, that knows you better than you do, because you have your own shadow and like blocks, and like you kind of wage war against yourself, which becomes more peaceful. You become more natural, but especially in the beginning, what you think is your intuition for many of you is like your shadow self being like, ugh, surface rationalization. So you have a portion of you that can see very clearly. If you can heat up that communication channel, I mean, that can help you find the right partner, the right career, the next transformation. It can help you know what's in your shadow. That's basically like what you want. You want to have that turned on. And other things happen. When you get to those levels, your dreamscape expands, your dreamscape becomes much more meaningful, potent, powerful. You accelerate your learning tremendously. All plots of consciousness go like this. So you really, the higher up you go on this consciousness evolution, the much faster you learn your lessons, which ultimately leads to you living the life you want to live, you know? So I'm not coming from a pedestal. I mean, I consider myself still having tremendous homework to do, you know, but each year gets better and better, better and better. I'm more in my peace, more in my divine personality, more in my strength, more in my knowingness. You know what I mean? And I learn faster. So, for me, before I had these clearer psychic channels, decision making was a hellhole. I'd feel torn. I'd feel split. Sometimes it's really hard through logic to do your value assessments, and there's twists and turns you don't know, and it's hard to know sometimes. But there's a portion of you who does know, and if you can heat up that channel, that's basically what I'm saying. So how did I do that personally? I'm going to take a moment with this, not to be boring, but just to give you like rational, objective, like things that happened. Most fun for me, I was at a phase where I was learning about galactic spirituality. And this was the time where I began nuancing my understanding of like my higher self. Like the Holy Spirit, you could call it in Christian terms, or the magic, had been speaking to me, and for years. But it heated up to another level, and a bunch of things happened all at once. But a fun one. I was reading a book by the Arcturians, and I mean, honestly, like, not common sense. Of course, this is a cosmic game. Do you think that's wasted creativity up there? The stories that are told are amazing, and they go through layers and patterns. So we relate to some of our star neighbors, and your selfhood played in many of those systems. And one of the ways in which this became true to me is I was reading a book by the Arcturians, and there was a line that said, "Even by reading this book, you'll know you're interacting with us." And that night, I woke up with like a gong going off in my head. It was a visceral, real stagnation. That nothing like this has ever happened before. My head went like, and it felt joyous. I felt elated. I woke up like pumping my fists. I was like a fucking thing just happened. And that was tremendously exciting. A few other things started happening that were beyond doubt, synchronicities that made me believe in there being an Arcturian like signal coming through. Now, mind you, I'd had years of signals coming through, cosmic winks, synchronicities, but it became more than that. It became like the place teaching me. And at this point, I'm like, okay, there's fucking definitely huge affirmation for this galactic aspect of it. Later, I began seeing my higher selves at times, and I came to know the portions of my multidimensional self that most dearly look after me, like my immediate babysitters. Yeah, I mean, for me, in brief, I have Andromedan and Arcturian assistants by my side, and then a higher self who's Lyran, and then Siren. Mind you, they have, it's like a multidimensional self. It's very creative. I feel as though under my Andromedan, there's a lot of energy. But I have a reference point for her. And I view myself as braiding in these energies and then having an ego that chooses. You know what I mean? I also view myself at time with interacting with other guides. I view myself at time interacting with some spirits that are not my friends. That was a phase I went through. Smoking too many spliffs, it opens you up. So, when I began to believe in there being spirits was when I was with this girl, and what had happened before this is I went to Peru. I had a subtle energy activation. Before that, I had had some body intuition turn on, like thumping. Dun, dun, dun. I had internal clairaudience turn on, which was a voice in my head. I was doing a ton of Zen meditation, ton of somatics, body work. I was eating like a warrior ninja. I was working out. I was tracking my dreams. I was outside doing Tai Chi. I was calling in the energies. I was highly spiritual in that phase. And I was trying to breach. I was trying to breach certain barriers so I could have my skill set back, so I could know who I was and why I was here, etc. Truth shall set you free. Already what had changed for me is the things that happened that I counted as miracles went from always being benevolent to after my subtle energy body turned on. Some people call it Kundalini, but I didn't experience it as a snake. I had another experience. I could tell in other ways, but all of a sudden, like, I felt much more chi, much more magic, like magic 24/7 almost. It was an initiation phase. And the thing was, the miracles around me started becoming trickster energy. Like, it wasn't always in my interest. It was like this, that, this, that, this, that, like 2 miracles in a row with 2 competing signs. And I was in a pickle. And now I'm in Africa and I'm with this girl, and it becomes clear to me. So now I'm starting to wonder if there are spirits who aren't our friends. I'm starting to think of them as flies. I'm starting to sense when like there's a negative energy on me and it's kind of like tooling me. Later I would tell you your own energy attracts what you're, once you're open psychically, your own energy attracts what you're communicating with. So if you're in your peace, you get a lot less of the flies. At this time, I used to smoke 50/50s, not all the time, but that would accentuate my being open to the flies. It's kind of like an invitation almost. Plus, I was still unhealed in many important ways. So I was really open and advanced in other ways, but really like also working on some important things, sacral things, and throat things. So now that I feel much more along my healing path, not finished, but much more along, I really don't deal with the riffraff hardly ever. I can feel it when it comes on in certain environments, but I have now ways to deal with that. So, but in this phase, it was an interesting thing, and I was trying to understand what's happening. So this cool story with this girl. It's brief, but it's good. It was like an objective story that put me over the top for believing in this stuff. I had an argument with her. We were kind of romantic, and the first night we spent together, it wasn't like a dream, but she slipped something over my ear in like the astral, like a tracker. And it didn't really make sense to me. I was like, and she kind of had this energy in her that at night, it would like rub her feet. I had like spider bites at the time. It felt like there was something in her that was almost against me or not my friend. And so the way she put this around my ear, it didn't really bother me because I was like a tracker in the astral. I think of the spirits as having like time-space capacities where they could always track me if they wanted to. So I'm like, okay, a tracker. So we had this argument where she's totally coming in her, I would call unhealthy energy, and or her energy that's not my friend, and I feel it in her. And so we have this argument, and I'm like, I feel like you're coming from that, like, and her voice slips, and she says in this weird voice, she says, "What about that bug in your ear?" Meaning like that bug in my ear. This is interesting because I thought of her as asleep at the time. It happened in the middle of the night, and so I asked her to repeat the words she had said, and she said them. She's like, "What about that bug in your ear?" I was like, "Do you know why you said that?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to tell you something. I want you to tell me if you're like aware of this happening." So I told her about the dream with the bug. She's like, "No, I have no idea about that happening." So I'm like, "Lindsay, there's something like in you that you're not even conscious of." You know what I mean? Like there's an energy riding her stream that she's not even conscious of. In my understanding, I mean, she's a beautiful soul. And she has reasons. She has past life reasons. She has reasons in this life. She's experienced some stuff. And I think as a kind of like shield or cloak, she almost allows this energy until she heals and clears that. You know what I mean? She almost has a demon on her stream. Some of you may have experience with people like that, where like they have one energy, then they have another, where it's like, whoa. If you're really in the streets, and there's some homeless people, especially if they're really on drugs, it's like you can like feel it. They're like in your face, and you feel like something draped over you, like feeding on your attention. So I definitely believe in there being a good and evil game throughout the cosmos that is amazing. And I do believe there are beings both helping us. That's the stronger thing, but also maybe trying to trick us into the dark path or the negative path or tripping up. In a higher sense, you could see that as also beneficial. They're pointing out your shadow. But at times, like, I think a lot of like the crazy things that happen, it's like people got in a really funky energy, and often drugs are involved, and then they basically let something else like coach them into steering the wrong way. You know what I mean? So I definitely believe in there being a spiritual game, a multi-layered game. We don't have that in real science that I'm aware of, like how many layers there are. The real science that I love the most, definitely shows that there are layers for the spiritual realm, like breathing this place into existence. There being still creativity here, but we're informed. And the my guess is 8 is correct, or the 7 days in the Bible, the 7 chakras. I think there's 7 layers to the game, as depicted in Law of One. But I couldn't tell you if that was for sure true. Law of One definitely has some distortions, in my opinion. So it's just very interesting. I kind of think the octave model is correct. 8 on the 8th layer, it's a new creation. But I just know for sure there are layers, and I've had some subjective experiences where I felt like I was dealing with like a layer above my own babysitters. That to me speaks in a very masculine voice, and it's like once or twice a year I hear from that portion myself. Now, clairvoyance as a whole, next story, I believed in when I started working with Gigi, my coach. And at the time, I had precognizant dreams. I used to ask for those. I had dreams that told the future. I had gotten signs that told the future. And there's science for us being able to tell the future and even shape the future. But a mystic, I never had a genuine example with a true mystic. And I worked with her as my coach for 2 years. And first time we talked, I mean, she got some things that were on my question list. Like I gave her like a little bit about me, and then she just went off. And she was going off on symbols in her mind. And she got things as like specific as, I'm getting that you're considering another trip to Peru. I'm seeing ayahuasca. I'm seeing that you went once before, and you're wondering if you should go again. I mean, she was like crisp, and she was doing it all through symbols in the brain. 2 years after that, 2 years and 4 months after that, my own internal clairvoyance turned on. And there was a phase about 7 months later where I started getting sports symbols, and every time it would be a blowout. It would be a blowout, like huge victory, huge victory. Then I got all the champions that year, which was really cool. The first one that came through was the Tom Brady helmet. That was the year the Patriots won. They were underdogs. I got the Toronto Raptors. They beat the Warriors. Like, that was wild. The next year, they gave me the exact college football. They gave me Clemson and then the LSU hat. To be honest, they then showed the Colts symbol, which I still don't understand. LSU over Clemson was the exact college football, and the Colts was not even close to right for football. I could tell a longer story about what I think that was, but in general, my clairvoyance has been like always right. And in my own life, I can verify. Like I see things coming, they show me things, and then they happen. I'm tipped off about things that happen. I'm in a relationship, and sometimes they give like pointers on how to handle the next conversation, stuff like that. In this way in which I navigated a job, they're extremely helpful, etc. Those symbols. To me, the internal clairaudience in my head, the voice in my head is always right. And the stuff that comes externally, like someone walks by and says something, I get less of that than I used to, but that I rely on less so. If I'm in a peaceful energy, sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes there's a way in which they can do clairaudience like almost through the background noise. I've had claircognance a few times. I think that's where you taste. I'll taste metal if someone's in their head or if I'm in my head. And every once in a while smell. But for me, it's primarily the clairvoyance, the clairaudience, and then I have the internal body system that thumps, that turned on once in a deep Zen meditation. I've been working for it. I've been working for it. Each part of my body thumps in its own way, and I'm still trying to map it all. And the way in which it thumps is important. But like if I forget my jacket, my pinky will thump. My pinky's my body. Or if there's a food that's really good for me, my other pinky will thump, you know? So I don't want to be too long-winded. I did begin to believe in chakras, which is a more complicated story. And I did 100% learn to believe in reincarnation, which is a whole set of stories. But the heart of it is kind of believing in there being high spirits, your own higher self giving you directives. The future can be known, the probable future, and you can be guided. You can also be kind of pulled off track. I even think people who aren't conscious of this, of their multidimensional self, still through their own like instinct can be guided beneficially and also pulled off track. So that's the first part of that story. I can follow up with when and how I began believing in chakras. That's a whole set of stories, and also my reincarnational experiences, the ones that I've had this far. And then wrapping it back to like our origins here, like the reason I tell this story is because I'm trying to kind of like paint a picture of what could be your goal, kind of spiritually or energetically. The higher you climb, it's meet the universe halfway, the more you can open to your soul, especially if you have that intent and that focus. The other thing I'd say is along the path, there were tests, or like I had to learn my lessons, or I had to hold greater layers of peace, energy, understanding in all sorts of situations. So through your own healing and growth, becoming a better person, you kind of get the keys to more of your self-remembrance, is the name of the game down here. I really can't hype this enough. I mean, this is the name of the game. This is your upstairs freedom. This is your dharma, or how you stack points. This is with this stuff, you can't get too far off track. You know what I mean? They'll tell you, because they'll be like, hey, go more this way. And they never lead you astray. So, I mean, there have been times I've doubted their guidance because it didn't make sense to my ego, and then I don't do what they say, and then later I'm like, oh, that was why. You know, I'm like, I'm not going to bring that item. Why would I need that? Then you get to the party, and like you're all playing bocce ball, and you're like, damn, I should have brought the damn bocce ball. You know what I mean? It's stuff like that. It's funny. They can really help you out because they can see things you can't. So that's it for now. Enjoy. Let me know what you think. Aim high. You're on grasshoppers. But also meet yourself where you're at. One thing I'd say in the beginning is dream journal. And then if you want to, ask for answers in your dreams. Or ask for a future telling dream. You know? And that's a really good way to start.